I want to welcome everyone back to day 2. Thank you for being here. Looks like we lost a few, but maybe they'll mingle on in. I know some couldn't stay for the second day, but I appreciate all of you being here very much. I want to mention our breakfast sponsor for the breakfast this morning. It's IRD. Eric Hooks, if you're in the room, please stand so we can thank you. Thank you. International Road Dynamics. We appreciate these sponsors of all of our food events. I think I may have forgotten to mention last night that our reception sponsor was ATI, Alabama Transportation Institute. So appreciate them, us, sponsoring the reception. One quick thing, yesterday I was asking you to sit at your assigned table and all of that. I just want to say you can sit wherever you want. If you don't, the whole point is just to mingle around and get to know people. So don't feel like you have to sit where you sat yesterday. And I know sometimes people want to because you're kind of settled in and, feel like you've got your stuff there. And that's fine if you want to, but don't feel like you have to. So, and anywhere there's an empty seat, you're welcome to take it. Okay, well, we're going to get started. I'm really excited about this first session. I'm going to have Clinton come up here and introduce our speakers, and then we'll get started. Thanks again.
Good morning again. Much like Rhonda said, this is probably a pretty important session for a lot of people in the room, a lot of grantees in the room in some form or fashion. Certainly FMCSA has some historic monies coming for availability to everybody, and then based on what we talked about yesterday and otherwise, we're hoping that money gets executed in a positive way towards public safety. And certainly a lot of growth for our state partner organizations. We understand the challenges in recruiting and whatnot right now, but we're hoping we'll overcome those challenges and you'll utilize that funding for a myriad of things that they may hit on slightly today and that Darrell hit on yesterday. So instead of me sitting up here all morning, this session is about bill funding opportunities. I don't want to push it out there like every detail in the world's about to come out, but I would suggest this. Wherever Mr. Tom Liberatore and Mr. Ruban go with that, I think this is a perfect opportunity to put them on the spot and say that this is a great spot for Q&A session at the end of it. And we'll see what we can get out of these two gentlemen to help us all start planning, because if you are a state partner, you've certainly had a little bit of insight already about the money that's coming, about the quick timetable we're working on to get certain steps taken care of to get that funding out, and then hopefully we can start executing that pretty quickly. So with no further ado, I will first introduce again Mr. Darrell Ruban.
Good morning again, everybody. I'm going to be fairly quick. You're welcome. Because I really want to make sure that Tom has more than enough time in this morning's session to really talk through what we need to talk through. But the only thing we're missing, though, Clinton, is a couple chairs up here with spotlights on them, so that when we get the Q&A at the end, I just had that a couple weeks ago. So, like I said, I'm going to be fairly quick. I'm going to talk a little bit high level on grants and opportunities. I just want to take a moment and say all the discussions, all the presentations yesterday were great. A lot of good information. I hope you're all getting a lot of quality things out of it. Same thing for today. And then once we're done today, the conversation and then the action continues, right? Where do we fit in? What do we do? How do we come together, etc. So as you all know, some of this is going to be somewhat repetitive, but I will be fairly quick. So as you know, the bipartisan infrastructure law provides more than $3.2 billion for the next 5 years, starting in 22. Bill provides supplemental grant and general operating expense funds, which we talked a little bit about yesterday, which then also translates into more personnel for FMCSA and maybe even some of you all out there through the grant process. MCSAP formula grant provided through the Motor Carrier Safety Assistance Program increases by approximately 61%. I know you've heard that before, but I think some of the things that I've seen in the last 6-8 months in talking about this, prepping for bipartisan infrastructure law, which is now here, implemented in FY22. What's our plan? What are we working on? How can we take advantage of receiving increased funds, both MCSAP and otherwise? So please, please, please be as prepared as possible on the state side of the House with your planning, your requests, your applications. NOFOs are out, coming out, etc. You're all working on your 23 CVSPs. The opportunity's there. We know there's challenges with it. Definitely acknowledge that right off the bat. But it's an opportunity to affect safety in a way we haven't before, in my opinion. So discretionary grants increased by approximately 90%. So we're talking about high priority, CMV safety training, CDL, all get additional funding as well. So there's lots of opportunities certainly beyond MCSAP. High priority grant now provides funding to states impounding or immobilizing passenger carrying CMVs. Determined to be unsafe or failing inspection. That's new under bill. Working through it, but just acknowledge that that's there, and there's certainly money available for those that want to pursue. Also, high priority grants get a brand new, I think as most of you know, what we're calling a SET grant, so safety enforcement training. Grant provides $5 million each year for 5 years for organizations other than FMCSA to offer and conduct non-federal training. So we've talked about that a lot with certainly our MCSAP partners. What does that mean? Where does that go? There's lots of opportunity there as well. It puts us in a little bit different zone, if you will, where NTC has been used to providing all of this training and being involved in the training for our state partners. And now through this grant, assuming we get applications, assuming they're accepted, assuming all the money is put out, assuming all the training then at the state level is taken over, which maybe it won't be. We got to wait and see where the applications take us. But it then puts us in the role more of a grant oversight rather than actually implementing state training. Bill increases emphasis on the prevention and detection of human trafficking as a priority for high priority grant, CDLPI grant programs, and is now allowable under MCSAP. And again, I know you've heard this, but I repeat these things because when we're building our CVSPs, our planning, and we already have things included and we used to pay for it this way, maybe there's new ways to pay for it based on where we're moving forward. So I just want to kind of close with, there's a lot of things that we could still talk about, but I think I want to close with the opportunities in front of us. Please plan, have the conversations. I remind you that Jack Van Steenberg, Robin Hutchison, prior to that, Mira Zoshi, had one-on-one calls in all the states with the state leadership, preparing them for bill. Not that that means it's going to make things easier or simpler for anybody, but people should know and understand what's now here in front of us and what our opportunities are, again, acknowledging all of those challenges. So please utilize Tom and myself while we're here. Ask whatever questions that you want. We'll help you in any way, shape, or form because it's in our best interest to help you during all of this time as well. So thanks. I'll turn it over to Tom and appreciate the time.
So I said Tom earlier. It's Tom Liberatore. Darrell just hit on a couple things. Number one, he was going 30,000 feet. We are truly going to the floor now with Tom Liberatore coming up to the stage. I believe he's probably the second least pleasurable person to be around in our agency, at least right behind Paul Melander, if you're from the South. No, in all seriousness, Tom is certainly a big part of facilitating our grants. He is the expert within our agency of doing so. No further ado, Tom Liberatore for you.
Did you say I'm the second least pleasurable person to be around? Okay, I was going to say, who's the first? Paul Melander. Okay, well, Paul, I guess we're in a very unique club at the bottom of the barrel. So, that kind of plays into, I ran into Darrell, Ruban, and Tom Keene last night, and I was like, okay. So, well, first of all, let's by a show of hands, who was with me in St. Louis, with us in St. Louis last week? Good. That means more than half of you won't be bored to tears by about what I'm about to say. So, last night we were eating, I was like, okay, so, Clinton knows Karen Brooks and her husband Alan. Alan's the FPS in our Alabama division. Karen works for me in the state programs division, but she obviously lives with her husband in Alabama. So I said, okay, so I want to think of something good to say, funny to say about football, because I know Karen said, well, whatever you do, if you're at the University of Alabama, don't mention Auburn. So I'm like, I don't know what that means. I'm not big into college football, but apparently that was a no-no. But being compared to the second least pleasurable person, I guess, hey, how bad can it be, right? Paul, you and I can start our own club, I think. So in all seriousness, I want to thank Clinton and Rhonda Strickland for doing this today. We're very happy to support this. It's great. We've got a number of these that go on around the country, in the East, the West. So we're really pleased that this engenders the kind of interest that we see here today. So what I'm going to do, as Darrell said, let me see if this works. Excellent, it does. So just go over some quick information, and I'm usually not a podium person, and I'm also worried that I'm going to spill the water on the laptop, which would be a disaster, so I'm probably not going to stand super close for too long. But what we're going to do today is just go over some of the basics of what FMCSA is, what our grant programs entail, and just leave some time for some conversation in case there's any questions at the end. So, for those of you that don't know who FMCSA is, I'm assuming you know who we are. We're obviously the primary federal agency responsible for the enforcement and safety of large trucks and buses throughout the United States. And those of you that don't have our website address, there's our web address if you wanted to go look up. We do have a really good website. We've actually got two. We have our main website, and then we have an analysis and information website, particularly those of you that are interested in data. The analysis and information site, particularly if you're a state partner or associated with a state partner. Now, a number of universities partner with our mix-up agencies to do research, to do assist with the development of their commercial vehicle safety plans. There's a lot of good data on the analysis and information site as well. So just some facts about FMCSA. So, about the number of our area of responsibility. So if you look at the number of trucks, straight trucks, this is just a quick snapshot. I'm going to use this actually because I keep turning around. I don't want my volume to go down. So you can see that our responsibility is actually rather large. For an agency of our size, we don't have a ton of people. But if you look at it from the number of vehicles and the amount of responsibility that we have at FMCSA, we actually have a very large area of responsibility to cover. If you look at over 10 million single unit straight trucks, 2.9 million combination, over almost 1 million buses, that's a lot of vehicles. There's over 6.5 million commercial drivers. That has actually increased a lot over the past year as we've been trying to get more individuals into the trucking industry, worked with the White House to improve and increase the amount of individuals coming through the pipeline to get tested, so that has increased. One that I always like pointing out is the 318 billion vehicle miles traveled. And all this is from our pocket guide to large truck and bus statistics. Mr. Tom Keene's division or area puts this out every year. It is on our website if you ever wanted to get a snapshot of data. Now, as you all know, this stuff is usually a year or two old, but it does provide a good idea as to the breadth of what's going on in the trucking industry in terms of volume, the amount of trucks, the amount of freight that's moved. More than 64% of freight by weight is moved via truck. That's a huge impact on the economy, and also a great reason as to why, as a safety organization, our mission, and by connection, the state's mission is extremely important, which is why we're here to talk about the grants, and this is an example of the kind of stuff that we do. I probably have it later in here,
But if you look at the actual activity that is conducted in terms of commercial motor vehicle safety inspections, investigations, safety audits, traffic enforcement, the vast majority of those safety activities are not done by FMCSA. About 95% of all of that is done by you. It's done by our mixed-up lead agencies, our local and municipal jurisdictions that have either a sub-grant through the mixed-up lead or a high-priority grant directly from us, do the vast majority of our safety activities. So without that partnership with our states, universities, and local safety organizations, really wouldn't have the amount of impact that we have right now. So there are two basic programs that I have within the State Programs Division, and I'll cover the ones that are in our CDL Division too. So we have the Motor Carrier Safety Assistance Program. That's our formula grant. The intent behind MIXAP was to create a uniform and reciprocal system of the enforcement for the motor carrier safety regulations across the U.S. and its territories. Prior to MIXAP, those of you that have been around that long, you'll remember that there was basically state-to-state kind of enforcement and safety requirements. Well, through our grant programs, when a state is issued our formula grant, each state that participates in MIXAP, and we now have every state and U.S. territory participating in MIXAP. We had one a few years ago that had stopped for a short period of time, but we have everyone in again. They agree to comply and enforce the FMCSRs, which are primarily 390 through 397, and also HMRs as well. The hazardous material regulations. So it creates a uniform and reciprocal system. That is a formula grant, and I'll get into that a little bit later as to what exactly that entails. High priority is one of our discretionary grants, so anyone that is eligible can apply for a high priority grant. Darrell touched on the newest member of the high priority family, the Safety Enforcement Training Grant, but high priority has been around for quite a while. That discretionary means you submit an application. Well, first, we put out a notice of funding opportunity. You submit an application in response to that, and then we go through an evaluation process to determine if we will fund your proposed project or not. The primary purpose of the high priority grant is to support the state's implementation of their CVSP. That's really a statutory, kind of way of saying it has to somehow connect to what the state wants to do. So for most high priority applicants, we ask that they coordinate with their state, talk to the mixed lead agency to see what their proposing is going to be, and any kind of contradiction to the state plan. Rarely is it, but it is something that we do ask you to do. The other two programs that we have. So we have the Commercial Driver's License Program Improvement, or CDLPI. That is another discretionary grant that provides financial assistance primarily to state driver's licensing agencies. So those are the ones, your MVAs, your DMVs, depending upon how your state has it set up, that issue your driver's license, do testing, that kind of thing. Very similar to high priority, no foes posted. You have to go through the application process. The Commercial Motor Vehicle Operator Safety Training Grant, or CMV OST, is another and our last of our discretionary grant programs that talks about or provides funding for the training of new commercial drivers. That is usually a lot dealing with community colleges that have training programs set up, but there are also many organizations that conduct training for new drivers that are eligible to apply for that grant. Also, there's a subcomponent to that, or a connection with providing opportunities for members of our armed forces. So those that are leaving military service, entering the trucking industry, there's some money associated with that as well. Actually, it's eligible, I should say, under the money available CMV OST for those purposes. So, just a little bit of background on MIXAP. It started in 1984. There were 4 states and had a total of $8 million. And then if you fast forward to today, we have 56 jurisdictions, if you count D.C., and all of our U.S. territories. And we have now over $470 million. So you can see over the past 30 years, we've had a little bit of growth in terms of the dollars available in the program. The structure changed significantly Under FAST, we used to have, I think, like 9 or 11 separate grant programs. Now we're down to 4 or 5. Combined a lot of those individual kind of niche grant programs under one umbrella under MCSAP. States and territories, as I said, form the backbone of what we do. I think I said that statistic already, that 95% of all of our safety activities are actually conducted by our grantees. That's not to say that we don't do our fair share. Just from a resource perspective, we only have so many. We only have so many safety investigators, only have so many border inspectors along the Canadian and Mexican border, and it would be very difficult for FMCSA as an agency to cover all the millions and billions of miles of road that are within the United States and its territories. So without that help, we wouldn't be able to be nearly as effective as we are. What does MCSAP support? So this is just a quick list of the major things that we cover under MCSAP. Some are required. We do require that you have an objective in your commercial vehicle safety plan relating to the inspection of commercial motor vehicles. We also cover traffic enforcement, public education and outreach, data quality is a requirement, PRISM participation is a requirement as well. That's the program that deals with the registration of vehicles and the information systems management. Most of you in the field will recognize that from out-of-service carriers. That's our primary program for the identification of those carriers that are out of service, and entails with it certain requirements that the state has to do as well. We have human trafficking intervention. That is something that has actually been in MCSAP for a while. So with FAST, it was deemed eligible that a MCSAP recipient can engage in human trafficking intervention associated with a commercial motor vehicle inspection. The bill, the bipartisan infrastructure law, really re-emphasized that, now has the same statement under high priority, and actually took it a step further to talk about the activities that we want our grantees to engage in to identify human trafficking, take enforcement action, engage in public education and outreach. So those are some of the things that you would not usually think of in regards to commercial motor vehicle safety. And actually our Deputy Administrator, Ruban, in our MCSAP meeting last week in St. Louis, mentioned the 2 areas of safety. Our main safety that you would traditionally see, and then these other areas of safety, dealing with human trafficking, dealing with drug interdiction, dealing with the safety of women in the trucking industry. So these are other things as well that from a safety perspective, we're going to do the 360-degree coverage of all those various angles. 2 things that we're really focusing on this year from FMCSA. The battery died, sorry. 2 things we're focusing on from FMCSA's perspective. That's okay, I can use this. You can keep that one. All right. Okay. All right, I'm back. 2 things are investigations. So we're definitely asking our state partners and our applicants to put in goals for investigations of motor carriers and new entrant safety audits. So those are the audits that are done on new carriers that are coming into the industry, new registrants with FMCSA, just got a DOT number, or just got the operating authority established. We have a bunch. COVID and the pandemic really created a boon in terms of new carriers coming into the industry, primarily either owner-operators, so single vehicle, single power unit, single trailer, or small 2-3 power unit organizations. So we have a number of those out there as well. From a safety effort, this covers what was done actually in fiscal year 21, which was obviously, we all know, we were all here, in the heart of the pandemic last year with COVID. Even during all that, we still managed to do 2.8 million inspections, over 2,500 carrier investigations, over 41,000 new entrant safety audits. So even in the heart of the pandemic, stuff still went on. People are still out there doing inspections. Those of you that are recipients, you're still out there doing your jobs every day. So thank you. We were at work as well. So the needs of the American people, the country in terms of the trucking industry and trucking safety did not stop. Usually that would be well over $3 million, but actually it's pretty close. So even though we had all the issues going on with the pandemic and COVID in 2021, we were able to pretty much maintain the activity that we would typically see in this area. If you think about 2.8 million inspections, it's a lot of inspections to go through. So eligibility. So MCSAP, which is our formula grant, only states can apply. MCSAP lead agency, each state has to have a MCSAP lead agency identified by the governor. That is the entity responsible for applying for those grant funds. Same thing with territories. When I say states, sometimes we lump in territories as well, but states and territories both have to have a assigned MCSAP lead agency to complete that process and application. They're required to commit a commercial vehicle safety plan. They're 3-year plans that you have to update every year with how you're going to spend your money and what activities are you going to engage in within that 1-year period. The good thing or great thing with MCSAP is lead agencies can do what's called subgranting. So those of you that are not a lead agency in the room, if you're a university, if you're a local safety enforcement organization, if you're municipal law enforcement, but you have a commercial vehicle safety program, and you want to start one, contact your lead agency. If you don't know who it is, you can ask the FMCSA division office in your state. You can contact us and ask us, and we'll tell you who to get in contact with. But you can partner with them because they have the authority to subaward. Very similar to those of you who are familiar with the NHTSA process in terms of the Governor's Highway Safety Office in each state. Very similar, except we're dealing with commercial motor vehicles, trucks and buses. Up there you'll see the formula factors. So this is what we use to calculate funding. There is no discretion involved in this calculation. It is a formula. It's in regulation. 49 CFR Part 350 details how we calculate that. So unlike the other 3 programs I was talking about, this one is strictly formula. You meet the eligibility requirements. You submit your plan. We approve your plan. Barring there's nothing that makes you ineligible for funding, you are allotted your formula funds for that year. High priority, as I said, is a little different. These are just some statistics from fiscal year 21, which was last year, compared to this year. You'll notice in particular, doesn't work, the difference in funding. If you add those two up, you were right around $45 million last year, right? If you look at fiscal year 22, we have $84.1 million to award. We're actually in that process right now. The NOFO for high priority closed in March. We're going through the application review right now in terms of determining who's going to get what based upon those proposals. So hopefully some of you in the audience actually applied, and you should be hearing from us in a few weeks about that. Again, it's a discretionary grant. It's open and competitive. Have to respond to what's in the NOFO. It says at the bottom there, states typically assume a 15% match. We actually have eliminated that for 22. There is no match in fiscal year 22, so all the funds that you get will be federal funds with no requirement for the state or the applicant, I should say, to match that at a 15% rate. CDLPI, again, typically awarded to states, as we said, nonprofit organizations to support compliance with 49 CFR 383 and 384. Those are the CDL regulations in the FMCSRs. Typically, the period of performance for this is the fiscal year of award plus 4 years. And if you look at what was awarded in fiscal year 21, or 29 million, CDL is seeing the same growth that we are seeing in high priority. So it's about double the amount of money that they had to issue last year because of what was underbilled. This is just, a quick graphic representation of what the CDLPI program covers. Obviously, it provides financial assistance to improve the state CDL program, ensures that qualified drivers are eligible to obtain CDLs. It also funds programs for national entities to deal with the enforcement, adjudication of commercial drivers. So there's some national organizations that also apply for CDLPI grants. So again, this is just to emphasize it's very important and I have a slide at the end to tell you what to do, that if you are not typically applying to us for funds under these programs, really read these no-fos, because you may be eligible, you may have a great idea for a program or initiative that we haven't thought of. It's very important to make sure that you read these notices of funding opportunity. Again, eligibility, just a real quick rundown of what that is. It's posted in grants.gov annually. Our no-fos, all of the no-fos are for discretionary grants, so high priority, CDLPI, CMV OST, they are posted on grants.gov. If you want to know when they're posted, it is important to please make sure you have a grants.gov account. Sign up for it. When you sign up for the grants.gov account, you can identify what agency or agencies you want to get notifications from. So whenever we post something new, you have a grants.gov account, you say, hey, I want to know when NHTSA or DOT or FMCSA posts an opportunity. You'll get an email that says, hey, check your inbox, something new's come up, and log into grants.gov. Again, with CDLPI, just like with high priority, it says 15% match. That's what we had done in the past. For the past few years, again, this year for 22, there's no match for any of our discretionary grant programs. We covered CMV OST a little bit a few minutes ago. Again, 21 was on $2 million, fiscal year 22. Again, we're going to have that increase. You'll see the next set of slides where we go over that into a little more detail as to what increased and why. As we said before, it's really to train individuals in the safe operation of commercial motor vehicles. And it's a small grant program, but it has a huge impact in terms of the ability to train veterans, to train individuals interested in the trucking career. Got a lot of opportunity, or a lot of attention, I should say, this past year, particularly with the White House. They had the Biden-Harris Trucking Action Plan. For those of you that were familiar with it, it was a 90-day plan that concluded in March, talked about increasing interest and individuals into the industry. This program and the CDLPI program were two major components of that. Eligibility, again, this is just a quick slide to run through who is eligible for the grant program for CMV OST. Same as we said for the other ones, everything's posted in grants.gov, 15% cost sharing at 0% this year. So how do you apply for FMCSA grants? I covered this a few minutes ago. The first thing you want to do is make sure that you have an account on grants.gov. These are the assistance listing numbers, that have for each of our programs. You can jot those down. You can also just go on to grants.gov and search FMCSA high priority or FMCSA CDLPI, and it'll point you to any past notifications or current notifications that are out. If you want to see the old NOFOs, when you're searching on grants.gov, just make sure you'll see some boxes on the upper left-hand corner. Make sure you're checking closed notices, or no longer active notices, and allow you to pull up previous NOFOs in case you're curious now. Since for most of our discretionary grant programs, you probably won't see these posted until sometime later this fall, late 2022, since we're pretty much through this cycle right now. Again, we say this a lot when we're doing funding conferences and outreach to our partners. Read the NOFO. It's extremely important that you do that. It's really going to tell you what the application requirements are, but it also lets you know what it is that you can apply for. Like I said, there's opportunities in there that you may not think of, and something that the department really wants us to do is increase our outreach and awareness for applicants that have not applied to us before or don't frequently apply to us before. Particularly, we're looking to reach out to minority institutions of higher education, HBCUs. There's a lot of interest in tribal governments that may be eligible to apply for discretionary grant funds. So those are all things that if you have those connections, or even yourself, if you haven't applied for one before, and you want to read it and go, hey, you know what, I think I can really make a difference in this area, please complete it, submit the application. If you have questions, you can contact us, regarding eligibility or the application process. We can walk you through that. We can't tell you what to put in it, and we can't tell you how to write it, but we can answer the technical questions for you. So what changed under Bill? I'll run through this. somewhat quickly so I can leave some time for questions at the end. So the biggest change, obviously, is it provided $1.2 trillion in infrastructure funding, specifically for FMCSA. It created or gave $3.2 billion in grant funds over 5 years. As Darrell mentioned previously, that's a 61% increase. Our discretionary grants, if you look at just the discretionary grants, increased by about 90%. So we nearly doubled our discretionary grant dollars from that perspective. We talked about the new safety enforcement training grant. That's somewhat limited in terms of you have to be a nonprofit organization, so only nonprofits can apply for that grant. But it is something new. I'll talk about that in a few minutes as well. And I'm not going to get too much into the federal fiscal law stuff, because that's a little bit, to be quite honest with you, this time of the morning, I'll probably hear thumps as the heads hit the table. If I start talking about federal appropriations law and general fund versus contractual dollars, suffice it to say there's a lot of money. We've got it from different pots, and there's some contingencies that go along with it that extend the time you have to spend it. So that's my federal fiscal law discussion for this morning. It says right now this is a little bit old. Through February 18th, we were working on the old requirements, but now we've got new ones. We've got the money, everything's approved, and we're actually getting ready to issue some of our formula grant awards for this year, and also, like I said, our discretionary grants. We're going to be getting those out fairly soon. For MCSAP, what did Bill do specifically? So we're going to kind of run through each one. It added a year of performance. Before this, it was the fiscal year of award plus one additional fiscal year. Now it's the fiscal year of award plus 2 additional fiscal years. So for those of us that are math challenged, 2 plus 1 is 3. So it bumped you out by 1 year for MCSAP. A high priority, it did not really change too much the period of performance for that, other than adding a new program. But as I said before, it added 2 things. One was the human trafficking emphasis. The other one was a specific sub-program to detect and immobilize passenger-carrying vehicles that are operating unsafely. It's got a high connection to our prison program. As I mentioned earlier, the performance registration and information systems management. Most states, or actually all states, are required to be at a participation level in PRISM. So because of that, most of our states already meet the eligibility requirements for that, but that is a specific call out in our high priority grant program to engage in those activities. And then the last one is the Safety Enforcement Training Grant, or the SET grant, that deals with training non-federal personnel. So if you're a nonprofit organization, that NOFA should be coming out soon, very soon, and you meet the eligibility requirements that are listed there in those bottom 2 bullets, you are able to apply to conduct this activity. It is only for the training of non-federal personnel. This is something that in years past FMCSA would have taken on through a national training center. Under Bill, Congress passed a grant program that assigns $5 million each year to say we want a nonprofit organization to come in and be responsible for doing that training. You're still going to have to work with us to make sure it's consistent. You know, we can't have various training standards across every region of the state, of the country, but that is the one major requirement for that is it has to be a nonprofit organization. So a state, a local municipality, an individual can apply. Some of the strategic objectives, if you look at some of the various documents that are on our website, particularly the National Roadway Safety Strategy or the NRSS, that was something that the Secretary put out a few months ago. Talks about some of our major safety initiatives. FMCSA is listed in there, at least 5 separate of those areas. There's also some policy stances that the department has put out in terms of safety. The department is obviously very, very concerned about safety, and safety is the primary mission of FMCSA, of course, but also economic strength and modernization, growing, and inclusivity in the country's economy. We have a lot of technology initiatives that can be done through high priority. I didn't mention the HPITD program, which is our innovative technology deployment. HPITD is responsible for the interconnectedness in the state's transportation information system. That's where you see a lot of the connection with the pre-screening technologies, various technologies at weigh station, tire anomaly detection systems, weigh motion detectors, how all of that is integrated into a state's transportation infrastructure. That's all under the HP ITD grant, under a higher priority umbrella, but again under the separate subset under HP, specifically for that. You know, we have the safety focus under HP, which is that CMV, the commercial motor vehicle safety subset, and then you have the ITD subset, which is where this comes in. Equity is a very important concern for the department. It is in our NOFOs. You'll see it listed in there. We list it in the formula grant as well. That is very important for our applicants to detail how they ensure that equity and enforcement and opportunity is conducted through their grant programs. Climate and sustainability, again, another key component of the administration, the department. From our grant perspective, we do list it in there. We're actually getting a lot of interest about electric vehicles. For those of you that aren't familiar with the enforcement side of the activities that we do, many of our state partners are asking about, especially now with fuel costs the way they are, can we purchase electric vehicles for routine enforcement? Can we pay for charging stations? The answer for both is yes. And that also helps with, obviously, climate and sustainability, and that we're using electric as opposed to fossil fuels. Last thing I wanted to put down there, as you'll see, make sure you carefully read the notice of funding opportunity. I put this in here like 4 times just because it's extremely important that you do that. Hate's a strong word. We really don't like rejecting applications because you're missing components of the NOFO. So please, I'm asking you, if you submit an application, make sure you read it. If you aren't sure, you can ask us. We can't tell you what to write, but we can tell you what is required to be in it. Don't sell yourself short. Don't eliminate yourself. This basically is, it's my football speech for today. Don't take yourself out of the game. So this is the funding that we talked about. So you can see here, the reason it's broken out, you have the gray lines and the white lines. The gray lines are what we would typically get, right? That would be our contractual funding. And then Congress gave us the white, the supplement you'll see in each one that accounts for the total amount of additional money that we're going to be getting each year. So if you look at MixApp, for example, it's $390.5 plus $80 million. And that carries through every year through the life of the bill. So all of our programs, except for the new one, which is the safety enforcement training, have the contractual dollars and then the supplemental that Congress added on top of it. So that's why you see the huge dollar expansion that you see in our programs for this year. And we talked about this last week as well when we were in St. Louis with our state partners about the opportunities this creates, what we're doing to be more flexible on our end in terms of expanding things that we may have not traditionally paid for, but we recognize now that can, one, have a safety impact and really create those avenues for innovation and forward thinking on the part of our enforcement partners. And the last thing I wanted to leave you with today is just these key points. As I said, sign up for grants.gov, go to our website. We have a great website for our grants information, lists all the programs that we have. I encourage you to go out there later today when someone's not talking, tomorrow, whenever, to make sure you investigate and look at what opportunities we have and what statistics are out there as well. Stay up to date by visiting our website. And also, like I said, just to reemphasize new opportunities that Bill is creating. The funding opportunities, the other areas under Bill, which I really didn't go into, but there are a ton of things that Bill is asking FMCSA to do. Research projects, advisory boards. So, go out and make sure that you're staying up to date on this information. And when you read these NOFOs, don't be afraid to propose something that may be a little bit forward thinking. If you're unsure, you can contact us and explain your idea, and we can let you know if something's, allowable or not. And then after that, it's up to you to kind of put your project together and make your pitch to us through your application process. Again, please make sure you go visit our grants page. That has a lot of information on there to keep you up to date on what's going on. And then lastly, it's my contact information up there, and my colleague, Nikki McDavid, who was the chief of our CDL division, her contact information is up there as well if you have questions about the CDL-PI or the CMV OST program. So that's the end of my official presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions if you guys have any. Thank you.
Hey, Tom, could you repeat all of that again?
Yeah, so I can. It'll be on the website. I'm assuming it's going to be posted, and you can absolutely read the slide yourself. Thanks.
The answer to that is you're fired.
Yes, that's right.
Nobody has questions for Tom? I mean, I gave a rough intro to start with just to liven things up, but Tom is an extremely intelligent person on our grants, probably the smartest guy in our agency in regards to that. He's certainly given, I think, a pretty solid overview. Comment about that?
I see one hand. Here, I can. Rhonda, can I give this to you?
I'll use this one. I saw one hand.
Greg for our NC State University. Can you give us an example of what kinds of training you kind of envision for that SET program for non-federal personnel, enforcement personnel?
Is that you, Greg? I don't have my glasses.
It is. It is, Greg.
No. So I need to be very obtuse because the NOFO is not out yet. Those of you familiar with the requirements, like when we're releasing a new rule, if we start talking about things that are in the rule before the rule is out, a giant cone drops down and sucks me up into a black helicopter I'm never seen again. So same thing happens with this. So essentially what that requires is we at FMCSA will no longer be the primary entity responsible for training non-federal personnel. So all of our state MCSAP, commercial vehicle safety, the people who conduct the commercial vehicle safety inspections, the awardees of those grants will be responsible for engaging in that. So that's going to be the certification courses, our inspection certification courses, our HM courses, and our investigation courses. They can also propose other training activity if they wanted to that could have a national benefit. And then there'll be some more requirements in the NOFO. It really should be coming out soon. It's been approved. I'm guessing the next couple of weeks, hopefully, that it'll be out. And then we'll have a funding conference like we do with all of our NOFOs. We'll go through the whole process and say, hey, here's what it is. Here's what we're looking for. Here's how you submit an application. Do you have any questions? That kind of stuff. Hopefully I didn't say too much.
Good morning, Tom. Tom Keene, FMCSA. I just would like you to repeat for the benefit of the MCSAP lead agency representatives in this room the general statements you made last week at MCSAP about the eligibility under MCSAP for large truck crash investigations and reconstructions in light of the large truck crash causal factor study, which I talked about yesterday. I gave a general comment, but I know you know the specifics, so thank you.
Yes, I'd be happy to repeat that. So for those of you that were not with us last week in St. Louis, we are going to be finalizing the list of cost eligibility changes from MCSAP. Today's Wednesday. So hopefully by next Tuesday or Wednesday, it'll be with Patrick, our director, and Darrell for their blessing. Two of the areas that we're talking about adding that we traditionally have not before is crash investigation and crash reconstruction. We don't use the term post-crash because many people tell me it's not really the post-crash, it's the crash investigation. We do fund we've always, for a while, funded the post-crash inspection. What we're talking about adding now for the purposes of every state, whether you participate or are providing data for the LTCCFS or not, is it is eligible for you to engage in crash investigation and crash reconstruction. There'll be some fence posts put around it. Obviously, what we don't want to have happen is then, okay, great, I have a state, I have $9 million in mix-out funds, and $8 million are going to paying for crash investigation and reconstruction. Obviously, we need you to maintain the other safety activities, your traffic enforcement, investigations, inspections, safety audits. But we are going to allow that to be mix-out funding to be used for those purposes, which indirectly benefits the LTCCFS in that it's important for us to get this data. It allows you to be able, from the state's perspective, to conduct the investigation and reconstruction, complete accurate and important crash reports, which also has a safety benefit. I think we've really been reassessing how we connect what happens in a crash, what are the reasons that cause the crash, and then how can we realize that in terms of changes in the future. And we've kind of mentally gotten past that, I guess, in the MICSAT program, and are going to be allowing states to use funds for those purposes. We have over here, Paul. You need to run. Come on, Paul. We have a reputation to improve. You got to get moving.
Can you clarify on the safety enforcement training high priority grant? When you say non-for-profit, does that include states or does that not include states?
It does not include states. It's, I believe, Bill specifically says 501c3. Don't quote me on that. I want to go back, but it specifically says not-for-profit organization. So it does not include a state government. I can tell you that much. Anybody else? I practiced 2 weeks for this. Come on, let's go.
Tom, I got a question.
Yes.
On one of your slides, you said that size and weight enforcement coupled with an inspections at eligible costs. Is there any guardrails or restrictions on that?
Yes, thank you, Paul. Yeah, so size and weight enforcement is something that's been allowed under MICSAP as well. However, it is not meant to be funded by MICSAP as a standalone activity. So what we mean by that is you can't just set up scales and go, whoop, I'm going to do size and weight, and then just let you roll through, set up some portable scales, do size and weight, and let you on your way. There are specific criteria. They're enumerated in what's called our MICSAP comprehensive policy, which is on our website. It's also in the FAST Act. Bill didn't change it. You need to pair it with an appropriate level of North American Standard Inspection, level 1, level 3, what have you, that would go along with it. Also, there's certain requirements, like if it's in an area where there's a steep grade and you want to do that before the truck goes down the grade or up the grade to make sure there's no problems with the vehicle, you can do size and weight enforcement in conjunction with the inspection at those specific areas. And like I said, the MICSAP comprehensive policy, which is on our website, does list what those restrictions are.
And it also includes ports.
It does include ports, yes.
Good morning, sir. Question. So the CMV recon is an eligible expense. However, some of the guys have to get the prerequisite course, the auto. Is that covered? So they have to go to the auto basic course before they can go to the CMV recon course.
Yeah, I'm having a little hard time hearing the. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I think I got it. Yeah. So yes, it would cover training. Is that what you're? Yes, it would cover training. Another thing we added too, in line with your question, not directly related to it, is I know there's a lot of agencies wanting to use drones for investigation and recon. So we also are going to cover the training, and if there's a requisite certification to go with the operation of the drone, we're going to cover that. We're going to cover that too.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sure. In line with the restrictions that talk about the kind of the fence we're putting around it, which is the final coat of paint we're putting on that requirement. Hopefully this will be here early next week. We're definitely going to get that out to you guys before the 23 CVSPs are due back to us, so you can put that in there.
If they wanted to conduct a House of Goods investigation and include safety, would that be a potential eligible expense?
Okay, so I will repeat Darrell's question since Paul couldn't run fast enough. So that was a great question, boss. That was good. So we got this question a few weeks ago where We have not typically allowed funding for household good investigations under MCSAP. When I say we haven't allowed it, it's because we are not provided the authority to allow it. So as with everything else, separation of powers, we need to be given the authority by Congress to do it, and we do not have the authority to do that, to pay for it under MCSAP. However, we got the question, well, can I investigate a household goods carrier if there's a safety nexus? And the answer is absolutely. So if they have, I'm going to use some terms of art here. So those of you in the CMV safety community will understand. So if their driver basic is above threshold, or their crash is above threshold. So what that is if we have a system to measure carrier safety, and it has 7 or 8 or however many different requirements across the spectrum of those key areas. If you have a safety reason because the trucks that the household good carrier are using are unsafe, they're engaged in a lot of crashes. Every time that you do a level 3, you're finding out that their drivers aren't properly licensed or don't have the proper endorsements. You can absolutely use MCSAP funding to conduct it from the safety perspective. What you can't do is say, oh, we're getting a lot of consumer complaints about household good carrier X, so I'm going to go in and do an investigation because of the consumer complaints. You can do it, but you can't get reimbursed through MCSAP or high priority. If you do that to say, I'm going to go and do the investigation because they've had 3 crashes in the past 2 months and both of their drivers were suspended, I need to find out what's going on. Work with our division office, obviously. We're going to always ask you to do that. But you can absolutely use MCSAP funding from that perspective. It's personally important for me. I'm getting ready to move, so I'm getting ready to hire a household goods carrier. So trust me, protect your move. For those of you that are about to move, FMCSA's website, it's great information. I'll make that plug too while I have the chance.
Hey, Tom. So you mentioned several different grant programs. Do the NOFOs for all programs come out at the same time, or do you have any staggered throughout the year, or do they come out at the same time? And I think you said it would be late 2022.
So that's a great question, Rhonda. So we try to put them out at the same time. This year we had 2 factors that kind of impacted that. One, we didn't really know for sure how much money we were going to get. Sometimes you forget, you go through this, and we're so used to the news cycle, but the appropriations for this year took a little longer than usual to get approved. They actually weren't even approved until the last half of March. So if you think about it, really only about 2 months, we've really actually known for sure how much money we were going to get in 22. We posted them early anyway. We posted them before then anyway. We really try to get them out earlier in the fiscal year, usually around that December time frame. We're actually going to try and get that a little bit even earlier, closer to the beginning of the fiscal year. And we usually try to get them out all at once. This year that didn't happen because of the trucking action plan and the challenges we were having with the trucking industry in terms of getting drivers into the industry. We pushed the CDLPI NOFO out at the end of December last year, but usually we do try to get them all out at once. That was your question, right?
Yes, so I was just, wanted to see, they usually come out at the same time, so then you wait the next year for them to come out again. Because you have so many programs, I didn't know if some came out at different times. But also I was going to ask you about, so FY22, there was no cost share requirement. Do you think that will continue next time, or do you know yet?
I don't know that. We have not made that determination yet, although... I don't want to make any commitments, but I would say we like consistency. So when it comes to that, and we are cognizant of the amount of funding that is increasing, and also wanting to engender interest from new applicants. So all those factors will play in that determination for next year. But we have not officially made that decision yet. It's not Tom Keene again asking another question, is it?
Yeah, Tom Keene, FMCSA. Since you don't have your glasses, I announce myself. To Rhonda's question, I wanted to remind everybody, you can sign up for those on grants.gov, you can sign up for the email subscriptions, and you can use keywords for FMCSA so that you don't have to keep looking on grants.gov since they do come out at different times. I just wanted to remind everybody, if I signed up for those so I can see real time when they come out, you can do that, and then it will send the email, hey,
Yes.
this is live.
Yeah, it's 100% correct. Yeah, if you do that, you'll get the notifications. Just to clarify, when you were talking, Tom, I was replaying Rhonda's question in my head. MICSAP, so the MICSAP planning memo, which is, we handle the formula grant a little bit differently, since it's not technically, you're not applying for it because you get it as long as you meet the requirements. That usually comes, actually that'll be coming out probably mid-June. For 23, we start that early because it requires the states to complete a commercial vehicle safety plan. Then we have a system that they use to do that. It's called ECVSP, but it takes time. I mean, these are pretty extensive plans. We ask for a lot of information. By the time it's all said and done, they're north of 60, 70 pages, most of them, by the time they're finished with them. So we start that process early, even though we're running behind because of the appropriations from last year. Hopefully that won't happen in 23, but that's somewhat out of our control. But we at least start the documentation process, for that a little bit earlier. Like I said, the discretionaries, we usually traditionally have been getting them out the beginning of the second quarter of the fiscal year, although we're trying to push that back, try to get that out as early as we can in October and November each year.
We are reviewing that timeline again, just so you know, at a higher.
Yes. Yeah, Darrell said we are reviewing the timeline again at a high level, and that is absolutely correct, yes.
And Tom, isn't it true that once the NOFA comes out and the cone of silence hits, the cone of silence lifts when the awards are issued, and that they can talk to the division office about any of their great ideas, they can brainstorm, they can write draft NOFOs until the next NOFO comes out, and then things shut down again, correct?
That is correct, Paul. Yes, thanks for bringing that up. So when when that's all done, we've made our decision. Those who weren't successful, the past several years, we've been sending letters to those applicants who said, you didn't get an award this year. Here's the general reason why. If you have any questions, reach out to us, and we can go over with you. So if you submit an application and we don't fund it, and you want to know why, I will tell you, this is the one thing that disappoints me a little bit in this regard, is I might get 1 or 2 calls a year, maybe, from applicants that were denied and want to find out why. I want to be a little honest. What's a little frustrating is, and we're running into this year too, applicants we denied last year said this project's ineligible. I get the application back, same project again. I'm like, man, that would be, and I'm really glad you mentioned it, Paul. Take advantage of that, because once we've made our decisions, we can tell you why we didn't fund your application. We can say, well, this is what the NOFO said. Here's what you did. Here's what played into our decision in general. And next year, if you want to submit this project again, take the feedback into consideration, because once that NOFO comes out and you say, hey, Tom, can I say this in my NOFO? Or would you be okay if I said this? I'm going to tell you I can't answer that question.
And also, most of the time, Tom's office funnels that information of where the weaknesses and why it wasn't awarded to the division office. So a lot of times you can check with the division office first, and they'll be able to talk about it with you. And if not, then obviously we'll reach out to Tom's office and can do it collectively. But we wanted to make sure that you know that we are available outside the NOFO window from the time it comes out and the time award. Once the awards hit, brainstorming, idea sharing, whatever you want to do for the next one, because a lot of times our NOFOs are not exactly the same, but very similar. If you got some great ideas, we're more than happy to talk to you about it.
We're very friendly, most of the time. I think that's it. Anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you all very much. Thank you.
That's an excellent job, Tom.